Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Chiang. Hello, and welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. It's the month of August, which means there are a lot of residents and fellows who recently finished their training and will be starting their first attending job relatively soon, if not already. This transition comes with joyfully a large increase in income, usually going from a 5-figure salary when you're in training to a 6-figure salary as an attending. With all that new income, there's a question of what to do with the extra money. Well, when you finally get that first paycheck, you're going to find out that Uncle Sam takes a chunk of it. But hopefully there is more surplus. And you probably are wondering what's the best way to go about managing money at this point. It's easy to just spend the money on things that you've been delaying buying during your medical training. This may be spending it on experiences like travel, or it may be buying a primary residence or buying a nice new car. However, if you're listening to this podcast, I hope that you want to use some of that extra income to build wealth. I'm not telling you not to enjoy some of that newfound income, but I do highly encourage that you do not get yourself in a situation where you're making high payments on something before you really figure out your money situation. Some of the biggest mistakes I've seen physicians make are buying too much house too soon, where they're getting themselves in a situation where they now have a large mortgage payment, and so they otherwise have a nice house but feel poor. Or a situation where they buy a really nice car and now they've got a really large car payment before realizing all the other expenses that start creeping up. Remember that building wealth is all about buying assets and investing. When you're first out of training, you may be thinking about whether you should be paying down your debt, like your medical school debt or other debt you may have incurred, versus investing, and how to start investing. These are good questions to be asking. There are many things that go into whether or not to pay down debt versus invest. When it comes to debt, you want to look at how much debt do you have? What kind of debt do you have? And what is the interest rate on that debt? If that debt is primarily your student loan debt, you really want to think about whether or not you would potentially pursue loan forgiveness. If you're working for a nonprofit hospital or organization, which includes most academic jobs, then you likely do want to consider public service loan forgiveness or PSLF. If you've been in a long training program that was done at academic institutions with nonprofits, then even if you don't necessarily want to stay in academics, it may be worthwhile finding yourself an academic position or a position in a nonprofit hospital long enough in order to get your loans forgiven before going into private practice. For example, if you did an internal medicine residency for 3 years, followed by a 3-year fellowship, which many fellowships are, GI, endocrine, etc., then you may only have to work for a nonprofit or academic institution for 4 years in order to have all your student loans forgiven. Depending on the amount of your student loans, this really may be worthwhile. The other thing you want to consider when it comes to paying down debt is whether or not the debt is tax deductible. You'll find with a 6-figure income that you're paying a lot more taxes, and anything that you can save in taxes means that you are paying less for it. On the other hand, if you have high interest consumer debt, like credit card debt with interest rates in the teens or even the 20s, then that is debt that you'll want to pay down as soon and as fast as possible. Even before you pay down that debt, you'll want to find any way possible to lower the interest rate on that debt. There are some jobs that will offer low interest or even forgivable loans as a benefit. You may receive a sign-on bonus, and that's something that you could use to pay down debt. You could also consider getting a personal loan if you can get a lower interest rate than what you're currently paying for your consumer debt. As a physician with a 6-figure income, you may find it a lot easier to get more favorable debt than whatever interest rate you are paying on your credit cards. Doc-to-doc lending is a company specifically founded to give loans to physicians as well as medical students, and that may also be an option for you. For full disclosure, I have invested in doc-to-doc lending. I don't get any kind of commission or anything if you do a loan through them. Other places you may want to look at for lower interest rate personal loans are any credit unions that you may belong to. If you're in a university setting, maybe there's a credit union that's associated with that university. You also just want to look in your community for local banks in your area that may have special programs to help the community. SoFi is another lending company that has done a lot of advertisements for loan consolidation. The higher the interest rate of the debt, the more you want to pay that debt off quickly, but also if you can get that interest rate down, that can be helpful as well. Depending on the size of the debt and how long you think it would take for you to pay off the debt, you may want to focus on getting the interest rate down versus focusing on just getting it paid off as quick as possible. When it comes to where to put your money to start building wealth, let's go over the priority list. I've already been talking about high interest debt, but depending on your situation, there may actually be something that you want to do before paying down that high interest debt. And that is look at your employer-sponsored retirement account and the rules regarding matching and investing. If your employer matches the money you contribute to your retirement account, then it's possible that you do actually want to put money in to get that match before even paying high interest debt. After all, if they match dollar for dollar, that's doubling your money. And that rate of return is even higher than a 20% interest rate on your debt. Unfortunately, it's not that simple to decide whether or not to invest in your employer's retirement account to get that matching. So you do really need to look at the rules. The limit for employer 401k or 403b matches vary by the company or at the institution. Often, it's 6% of the employee's salary or up to a certain dollar amount. For example, an employer may match 50 cents or $1 for every dollar the employee contributes, up to 6% of their salary. In this case, you would want to contribute 6% of your salary so that you can get that matching amount. Some employers may also limit how much they match to a certain dollar amount, so they may only match the first $5,000 of contributions, for example. If that's the case, then you would want to contribute $5,000 or however much money you have to contribute so that your employer contributes the $5,000 limit. So if they contribute 50 cents on the dollar up to $5,000, then you would want to contribute $10,000 to get them to contribute $5,000, which is a 50% return on your money immediately. And again, that would be better than a 22% interest rate on your credit card debt. So whatever contributions get matched, you'll want to take that match. That match is actually really part of your compensation that you're missing out on if you don't go for it. And again, it's a guaranteed return on your investment that you're not going to get anywhere else. There is one big caveat on that, though. You do have to stay at your employer long enough to vest to keep the employer contributions. So that's what vesting means. And vesting periods vary. Some jobs let you vest a percentage of contributions each year until you are 100% vested. For example, maybe you vest 20% a year. So if you leave after a year, you only get to keep 20% of what the employer contributed. If you leave after 2 years, you would get 40%, 3 years, 60%. And then at 5 years, you would be 100% vested. Other jobs require you to work for a certain number of years until the employer contributions vest. In this case, it could be that you don't vest at all until you work for your employer for 5 years. Then after 5 years, you're 100% vested and you can keep any of the money that your employer has contributed to the employer-sponsored retirement account. So depending on the regulations and rules for your company, it can really make a difference. So with the gradual vesting, if you left after 4.5 years, you would still get to keep 80% of your employer's contribution. But with the second example, where you don't vest until 5 years, then if you left after 4.5 years, you would get to keep nothing. And it might actually be worth just staying around for another 6 months so you get to that 5-year mark so that you get to keep all the contributions your employer made to your retirement. If you don't know if you're going to be staying with your employer long enough for the employer contributions to vest, then depending on your situation, contributing to your employer-sponsored retirement account may not be your first priority to building your wealth. In this case, if you do have high interest rate credit card debt or consumer debt, then that may be the better place to be paying down that debt instead of getting the match if there's a high likelihood that you're not going to invest and not going to get to keep that match. If there is a good chance that you will be with your employer long enough to vest and keep a portion of the employer's contributions towards your retirement, then you do want to make that contribution to get that match. So you can really see how personal finance is personal and it really depends on your personal situation. But this is all figure outable. If any of this is confusing, please reach out to me and I can try to help you with your specific situation. Once you've figured out how much you'll contribute to your employer-sponsored retirement account, if you are going to do that, and you've set it up, then the next place you want to put any surplus money is that high interest rate debt. So what qualifies as high interest rate debt? In my mind, any double-digit debt is high interest debt and should be a priority to get paid off as soon as possible. So that means anything 10% or over, but even 8 to 9% is probably high enough interest that you want to consider getting that paid off sooner than later. The average return of the stock market is around 10% before inflation. That means if you have an interest rate that's above 10%, then paying down that debt will have more impact on your net worth than investing in the stock market. Paying down that debt is a guaranteed rate of return of whatever interest rate is on that debt. And any kind of investing that's getting you a 10% return or higher is going to be more of a variable rate of return or have some risk that you don't get that return. If you do have debt in that 8 to 9% interest range that's not forgivable and not tax deductible, then consider also paying down that debt before you do other investing. Once all your high interest rate debt or debt over 8% interest is paid off, then you want to go back to contributing to your retirement accounts. Depending on your tax bracket and what options you have with any possible employer-sponsored retirement account, you'll want to decide if you're contributing to a traditional 401k or 403b, Roth 401k or 403b, or doing the backdoor Roth IRA, or a combination of these options. I am not a certified financial planner, so again, don't take this as professional financial advice. All personal finance is personal, and so your situation might vary. But I want to give you a way to think about how to choose what account to invest in next. When it comes to choosing between going with a traditional account or a Roth account, the way I think about it is that you want to consider your current tax bracket and what tax bracket you'll think you'll be at in the future when you're withdrawing from your retirement accounts. Of course, we don't know what changes there'll be in tax brackets in the future, but in my mind, chances are tax brackets will eventually go up given our current national debt as well as our government spending habits. I'm just going to use me as more of an example because obviously I think about my finances more than anyone else's, as everyone else should be doing for themselves as well. Personally, I don't see myself withdrawing more money from my portfolio than would put me above the current 24% tax bracket, which means for married filing jointly, $383,900 in 2024. To kind of state that in a different way, I don't see myself having so much passive income that it exceeds $383,900 a year when I'm in retirement. I also don't plan for a retirement where I'm able to withdraw $383,900 or more from my portfolio and have it last through my retirement. Either way, in retirement, I don't see myself exceeding being in the 24% tax bracket. Remember, in retirement, your tax bracket is going to be based off either how much of your portfolio you're liquidating that you have to pay taxes on, meaning how much you're taking out of a traditional retirement account, as well as any passive income that's being taxed on ordinary income rates. A lot of investment income is taxed at lower than ordinary income rates, so that's also something to consider. In fact, I think it's actually more likely that when I'm in retirement and withdrawing from my retirement accounts, that I'll probably be in the 22% tax bracket, not even the 24% tax bracket, assuming the current tax bracket rates as they get adjusted each year for inflation and income increases. So if my income is going to be in the 24% tax bracket, then I contribute to my Roth accounts over using traditional accounts so that I'm paying the taxes upfront now, I'm paying the 24% tax now, and then the money can grow in that Roth account tax-free. And then when I take it out, I don't ever have to pay taxes on it again. If I had put that money in the traditional retirement account, then I wouldn't be paying the 24% tax on it now. It goes into the account and still gets to grow tax-free. But then when I withdraw from the account, I would have to pay 24% tax on all that money I'm withdrawing, which includes paying the 24% on all the growth that money has also done over time. If I were currently in the 37% tax bracket, then the choice between using a traditional account versus a Roth account becomes a little harder. It'll depend on how long the money contributed will be growing within that tax-deferred account to whether it's better to invest in a traditional account versus a Roth account. The longer the time horizon for investing, the more the growth will account for the value of the portfolio compared to the actual contributions made. With a 20-year or more time horizon, then it's very likely that it's still worth investing more in a Roth account, even at that 37% tax bracket. With a 5-year time horizon or less, then contributing to a traditional retirement account and taking the tax deduction now makes more sense. That's because with 5 years, you're not going to have nearly the growth. And so after 5 years, the percentage of the portfolio from the money that you put in is much higher than the percentage that's from growth. But with more time, that allows more growth and the magic of compound interest. And as more of the portfolio really represents the growth, if you don't want to pay taxes on the growth, when you withdraw from the account, then you want to have it in a Roth account. Let's say that you plan to retire at the age of 65, so there's no issues with withdrawing from your retirement accounts in terms of penalties. Even so, you're going to leave money in those retirement accounts because you may live another 30 years. I'm an ophthalmologist and I see patients in their 90s on a regular basis. So that money will still be growing and invested for a long time. If you really want to know the right answer in terms of whether or not to do traditional or Roth, there are ways to calculate that, but you'll want to do that with your CPA. Once you've gotten to the point where you've maxed out your 401k, your 403b, your backdoor Roth IRA, and your healthcare savings account, and potentially a 457 plan if you're working for a government type of institution, then your options become a lot more open, and it'll really depend on your financial goals and risk tolerance what you do next. You may want to save on a down payment for a house or buy your next automobile without a loan. You could also invest in non-tax advantage accounts. Or you could even start thinking about investing in alternative investments like real estate, whether that's passive or active, or even investing in private equity or venture capital. That's when the real fun begins. Of course, if you don't find investing fun, you can continue to invest in low-cost index funds. There's nothing wrong with that. If you would like my help setting up your financial plan, no matter what stage you're currently in, please reach out to me. While I'm not a certified financial planner, I can help you clarify your financial goals, look at your current situation, and help you make decisions that are right for you going forward. The hardest part about managing money is really managing your thoughts about money and getting you to take action. The technical aspects really aren't hard. It's making a decision and sticking with it that can be difficult. You are the person most capable of making decisions that are best for you. Don't try to outsource that decision-making to someone else. Even if you use a financial advisor, remember that they are an advisor and ultimately you are the decision maker. You can set up a Zoom meeting with me at www.growyourwealthymindset.com or send me an email at growyourwealthymindset@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being a listener of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you've been enjoying these episodes and learning a lot, please share with your friends and colleagues. I know that increasing financial literacy may not be everyone's idea of fun, but hopefully these podcast episodes break down financial concepts into bite-sized episodes that you can listen while you're commuting to work or getting some exercise. I'll be back next week with another episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.